your host and White House correspondent. I'm in touch until you be in touch. Follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. All you got to do is type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or you can just tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Last but not least, subscribe to a More Perfect Union podcast. That way you will never, ever, ever miss an episode. Now, listen, there is a lot that is happening in these DC streets, and we want to make sure that y'all are staying in the know, that you all are taking advantage of every opportunity to tap in. And so mark your calendars for Monday, September 1st. I can hardly believe September is upon us. Monday, September 1st at 10 a.m. on the corner of 14th Street and U Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. is the DC Freedom Run. All faces, all paces, 4.5 miles, plus there's a 2.5 mile route. The DC Freedom Run is a protest against President Trump's fascist takeover of the district. That's what they say. Think of DC Bike Party, but on foot. Runners, walkers, movers with shirts and signs, everybody in the spirit of taking back our streets. You can bring your friends, bring signs, bring the kids and dogs are allowed. Again, it's the DC Freedom Run. It's taking place Monday, September 1st on the corner of 14th and U Street Northwest. It is a protest with a purpose. And so for more information, go ahead and go to DC Freedom Run on Instagram, and you can get all the information there. All right. Now it's time for your national news roundup. It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. Just yesterday, we shared with you the heartbreaking reports of the mass shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well, today, the Associated Press is reporting that police say that Minneapolis church shooter was filled with hatred and admired mass killers. The shooter who killed two Catholic school students and wounded more than a dozen youngsters sitting in the pews of a Minneapolis church once attended the same school and was obsessed with the idea of killing children. That's what local authorities are saying. The shooter, identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, fired 116 rifle rounds through stained glass windows while the children celebrated Mass. While they celebrated Mass during the first week of classes at the Annunciation Catholic School. Acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said that videos and writings that the shooter left behind show that the shooter, quotes, expressed hate towards almost every group imaginable. The only group Westman did not hate was mass murderers. That's what acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said. He went on to say, in short, the shooter appeared to hate all of us. In other news, Gavin Newsom is not mincing words at all. The USA Today is reporting that California Governor Gavin Newsom says that he thinks that President Trump will seek to remain in office beyond his constitutional term in 2028 and use federal agents to try and rig future elections in his and Republicans, the favor of his Republican supporters. Newsom, who has also acknowledged that he might run for president in 2028, has become one of the Democrats' most forceful and visible critics of Trump. He gave what appeared to be the most extensive and full-throated warnings about the current president and the state of American democracy in a 48-minute interview just yesterday at Politico's The California Agenda Sacramento Summit. The U.S. is on the precipice of tipping into authoritarianism. That's what Governor Newsom said. And he said that because of actions taken by President Trump, including using federal immigration agents as, quote, the largest private police force in history for his own political benefit, repeatedly using the audience to wake up, urging the audience to wake up. Newsom said that the rule of law in America is, quotes, being replaced by the rule of Don, and warned that Trump and his administration will send federal agents to polling places and voting booths across the country in upcoming elections. Governor Newsom also said that he thinks that Trump wants to stay in office and question whether there would be future Democratic elections at all. It is quite serious that a sitting governor would go on the record and explicitly say these things. We're now at the point where speak the quiet part out loud or go home. And it looks like Governor Newsom has chosen to say the quiet part out loud. In other news, the U.S. Air Force is to grant military honors to Capitol rioter fatally shot on January 6th. I saw this story. I could hardly believe what I was reading. As somebody who was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, who had visited the Capitol, who had witnessed the insurrectionist in action, I winced when I read this headline. The U.S. Air Force will provide military funeral honors to Ashley Babbitt, the rioter fatally shot during the January 6th Capitol attack, marking another step in President Trump's aggressive rehabilitation of the attack. The Guardian is reporting that the Undersecretary of the Air Force, Matthew Lemire, confirmed the decision in an August letter to Babbitt's family. The Biden administration previously denied Babbitt the honor, but Lemire said that he was, quote, persuaded that the previous determination was incorrect. After reviewing new information about her death, Babbitt was 35 years old, served in the Air Force and Air National Guard, and was shot by Capitol Hill police as she climbed through a barricaded door near the House chamber in the mass frenzy to overthrow the results of the 2020 election. Now, the Air Force had originally refused honors in February 2021, according to Lemire's letter, saying that they would, quote, bring discredit upon the Air Force due to the circumstances of her death. She was the only person killed by gunfire during the riot. This announcement made public today by conservative legal group Judicial Watch follows a nearly $5 million wrongful death settlement that the government paid Babbitt's family in July. Trump has systematically worked to reframe January 6th since returning to office. And you might remember that on his first day back, he pardoned approximately 1,500 defendants connected to the riots, calling their prosecutions, quote, a grave national injustice. The pardons covered nearly all those jailed or awaiting trial, including extremist group leaders sentenced for seditious conspiracy. Finally, in international news, Rwanda accepts 7 people from the U.S. as a part of a deportation deal. Can you imagine being deported, let alone wrongfully deported, to a country that's not even your own? Well, 7 people have arrived in Rwanda as a part of a deal to accept deportees from the U.S. That's according to the Rwandan government. The Trump administration has been negotiating arrangements to send people to third countries, including South Sudan and the country formerly known as Swaziland, as a part of a wider deportation drive. Officials offered no information on the nationalities of the 7 deportees, but Rwanda said on August 5th that it would accept up to 250 people from the U.S. and that it would have, quotes, the ability to approve each individual's proposed for resettlement. Rwanda also signed a lucrative deal. It's worth noting they signed a lucrative deal in 2022 to accept migrants from Britain, only for that agreement to be scrapped when the Labour Party came into power. And so that's what's happening. You have folks being deported to countries that aren't even their own. When we come forward, we're switching gears. I am looking forward to being in conversation with Patrick Young. Patrick Young, he is a nationally recognized leader in workforce development and economic empowerment and community innovation. You might remember that he's the founder and CEO of For Social Peace. It's the nation's first digital community violence intervention organization. They are pioneering efforts across social media and gaming, the metaverse, and they are really punching above their weight class to reduce online harm and create safer digital spaces. He is a change maker on the front lines. Make no mistake about it. Patrick Young, when we come forward, you are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai. I'm really delighted to welcome Patrick Young. He's the founder of For Social Peace. He's a nationally recognized leader in workforce development and community innovation, among so many other things. And he's leading the nation's first digital community violence intervention organization. He is a pioneer, no doubt, and we are delighted to have you here. Welcome.
Welcome, Dr. Quartelai. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's great to have you here. So there's so many news headlines that I want to get your hot take on. But first, while we've been on the air, a little bit of breaking news. NBC News reporting that 3 officers ordered to have new trials in the death of Tyree Nichols. A Tennessee federal judge today ordered new trials for 3 former Memphis police officers who were convicted of felony counts in the beating death of Tyree Nichols after a 2023 traffic stop. This is not encouraging news, certainly from the community perspective. You are leading efforts and have led efforts around interrupting violence in our communities. That work requires building public trust. Talk to us about how you think what you think this headline will do in Memphis and other parts of the country when it comes to that very vital area of work around building trust with community.
First, it's unfortunate. The breaking news even yesterday and this news today, violence comes from your inability to control your feelings or emotions. And if we look at the psychology of where that violence comes from, when you're in a space where you're not able to control your feelings or emotions, that can rupture into violence. And so these conversations, you begin to see that those feelings are now going to outpour. And if people don't care about your feelings or what you're thinking, they're not taking you in consideration. Again, it's a recipe for disaster. And, I expect that they may have some violent outbursts behind it because it's a sensitive subject. And when we think the emotional distrust, all the raw feelings, all the raw emotions, it begins to weigh in. And it's something that we have to consider. Like these conversations, these decisions that we're making, you can't just make it and say, "Oh, people will be okay; they'll get over it." These emotions are going to turn into some real outbursts. That, unfortunately, the same way that we saw the tragedy with the school shooting, those emotions and feelings turned into something tragic.
Yeah. I mean, to say the least. And so, so talk to us about how headlines like this have really fueled some of the work that you've been leading. You are founder and CEO of For Social Peace. As I mentioned before, it's the nation's first digital community violence intervention organization. It's not lost on me, and I'm sure a lot of our leaders, learners, and listeners, that the current president might want to learn a thing or two about your organization and the value add in terms of building public trust and other things, because right now there's a narrative afoot from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and beyond that suggests that programs like yours don't work, and that what we really need are just more officers on the street. Law enforcement needs more muscle. What's your reaction to that?
I think that we can look at the science and really just pay attention to it. I like to compare, every August we celebrate. I'm from New Orleans. And so even in the celebration of Hurricane Katrina, we look at there's a hurricane season. We know that as hurricanes come and form, the pattern of destruction that can follow, you can track it, you can follow it. There's science behind it. You see it. It's a very real thing. And so now when we look at August has turned not only to hurricane season, a football season, it's returned back to school shooting season, where we can see a pattern that develops every school year of shootings that take place. And if we can predict that these shootings are going to happen, then we can prevent it. What was tragic about this is that not only were these two students praying in a church to show that the church isn't safe, there was a digital footprint online before it happened offline. And so the young man left a manifesto saying he's going to do all these extremist things, and there was no intervention. The school shooting previously in Texas and Uvalde school shooting, the guy left a manifesto on Facebook. The shooting in Buffalo, New York, there was a digital footprint on Twitch. And so now what we're seeing is that there is a pattern of behavior where people go online, express their thoughts, and execute it offline. And if we can intervene and prevent it online, then we can stop it from happening offline. To say that it's not an effective model and it's not needed, then why do we need X? Why do we need social media content? Why does the president go online to express his thoughts? Because again, his feelings and his emotions, they're going to carry weight, and somebody's going to execute those thoughts out in public. And so for me, I was a director of gun violence prevention in the city of New Orleans. And what I found in that a lot of the shootings that was taking place at the time, it started on social media. It started on digital platforms. And what we had was this on-site thing. So I saw you online, you talk all this stuff. And then when I see you offline, it's go time. What I found is that there was no barriers. And one of the best examples I like to give is if you go to a park right now, any park, any city, swing, slides, there are going to be parents who are watching their kids play and be safe. And the hope is that there's no white van that's going to come and take their kids. Well, kids are online on digital platforms all day long, digital parks, and there are no parents. And these digital vans are taking kids and taking them daily. Mm-hmm. And what you find is that now we have a task force of, I think it was in Orlando, where there was a digital task force that found that there was this trying to sex traffic on digital platforms. We see now these school shootings on digital platforms executed offline. We're starting to see even the violence behind the T app and Messenger and Instagram. All these online activities have offline consequences. And if we don't address it, then all we're going to do is be responding. And that's what we're doing more than anything. We're just responding to the aftermath of the violence. But to know that this young man was online, had a manifesto, all kinds of threats. Nobody wants to hear that you knew about it and you did nothing. In the same way, if you see a hurricane coming and they're warning you and telling you, get out of the disaster zone, and you stay and you get flooded and you lose your life unnecessarily. Again, this is something that if it's predictable, it's preventable. And we have to find ways that we can intervene, and change that behavior.
I mean, it makes sense to me, everything you're saying, and the fact that our government has been so slow to recognize and connect the dots between behaviors online and offline, and looking at behaviors online as predictors of at least what's possible offline. I think, you've forever sort of created a shift for me. Maybe this is the same case for folks that are listening and streaming right now. The idea of digital vans are scooping up, our kids. They're scooping up folks in our communities each and every day on these social media platforms. And so if we're going to look at the physical vans,
right,
that are disappearing people,
right,
across this country right now as we speak, masked men disappearing people. If we're going to be outraged about that, we should also be outraged by the fact that folks are doing that in the most digitally savvy way on some of the most popular social media platforms right now, also as we speak. And so when we come forward, I want to get your hot take on some trending headlines as somebody that is on the front lines of community violence intervention, as somebody who once served as the director of gun violence prevention for the city of New Orleans. I have a feeling that you have something to say, and we want to give you plenty of time to say it. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with Patrick Young, the founder of For Social Peace. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and really honored to have a leader from the front lines joining us this hour, Patrick Young. He is founder of For Social Peace. He is the former director of gun violence prevention for the city of New Orleans. We've been talking about your work in the digital space, and I really appreciate you connecting the dots between violence prevention, community violence prevention, online and offline. It's not one or the other; it's both.
it definitely is. And then there's a science behind it. During COVID, there was a digital epidemiology study to show how diseases are spread, and they used the online platform to engage and to find out how can we prevent diseases from spreading online. So if you said anything about COVID, I don't know if you remember, there was a tag or something like you said anything, there was a note, this could be false or this information. So how come when we see something violent or something happening, there's no tags? There's no public health cry out. And so we have to make sure that we address this as a public health crisis. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for children in America. And it's stimulated from online activity. And so if we look at what's happening online, that information is executed offline. It's, again, as we can predict it, it can be prevented. It can be prevented.
And that's why, it's a little strange for folks when we see the First Lady of the United States purporting to champion, anti-hate
bullying
online.
Online.
But what we're seeing coming out of so many figures in the administration, including the president, is rhetoric that stimulates hate. At the very least, it stimulates hate.
If it wasn't effective, you wouldn't use the platform to spread the message. Just saying.
And so,
yeah.
Speaking of messages, NBC News is reporting that DC Democrats are rebuking Mayor Muriel Bowser's comments that Trump's surge reduced crime. I know my group chats have been going off all day over this. Members of the DC Council, they're pushing back now against Mayor Bowser's remarks that President Trump's surge of federal law enforcement personnel into the city has helped lower crime. Zachary Parker, city council member in Ward 5, says, quotes, "As I feared, our mayor's words are now being used to justify harmful federal overreach in cities nationwide. This is bigger than DC or partisan politics. It's about resisting creeping authoritarianism. We must not legitimize an illegitimate agenda." Patrick, as somebody on the front lines championing violence interruption, what's your take on the mayor's comments?
So honestly, working previously working in a previous mayor administration in New Orleans, first that's a difficult situation, and one of the things that we play these sides of politics, but right now, just as the human side of that person in that situation, she has a really difficult job. I think the messaging could have been a little clearer around, instead of the National Guard, let's get the Department of Labor to get jobs and opportunities to our youth. Have a national campaign around making communities work again instead of making them safe around crime. I think you can add, although we appreciate that uh, the National Guard is here, instead of them picking up trash, why don't we pay some of our community residents to do that work? Whatever resources are available to deploy the National Guard, let's get the Department of Labor to use those resources to employ our students in after-school programs for learning. Like, re-messaging and reiterating that, yes, while this is appreciative, this is what we really need. But again, sometimes when you're in that seat, it's difficult to make some of those calls. And so for me, I feel like we're too quick to jump against someone. As a Democratic Party, I think that right now, if there's a way to rally behind her and help her with messaging and help her with context, then that's what you do. I don't think you should just blast her immediately and then turn against her, because you say the wrong thing and then now, again, like they do on social media, you're canceled. And so we have to find a way of consoling and supporting instead of always want to criticize and cancel.
Yeah, and it's also important. It's worth noting that DC is like any other city in the United States in terms of its relationship with the president, with the federal government. DC depends on Congress for its budget. And by the way, DC still hasn't had its budget approved by Congress, and so you better believe every single word that this mayor puts out in any public statement is being scrutinized. Now, there's some people out there who say, you know what, they're probably gonna slip a Mickey into the budget anyway, and so you might as well sort of stand on business. It is a tricky position to be in, nonetheless.
Definitely. I would. What I would like to have seen was other mayors come and rally behind and support her. If there are other mayors of other cities to support the language, the strategy, to really show that there's a unification around, hey, listen, before the president's intervention, we saw a reduction in crime like you see in Baltimore, like you see in Chicago. Even in New Orleans, we've seen a reduction in violence of almost 30%. How do you rally behind and show that, hey, this is what appreciate that you decided to help, but the help and what we need is not in enforcement, but in employment opportunities. And just putting it out there. I think that's a good way of acknowledging, but also showing that you really do need. I don't think we should have this kiss the ring attitude at all.
Yeah. Well, we're all going to continue to watch that story as it develops. But back to some of your work on the front lines. You are a W.K. Kellogg Foundation Global Fellow, and you actually graduated from University of Chicago's Community Violence Intervention Leadership Academy. Who knew that a Community Violence Leadership Academy even existed? What are we missing in the press? There are a lot of headlines that are swirling around public safety, around law enforcement that has more of a guardian mentality versus a gladiator mentality. What are we missing in the media in terms of the conversation around community violence interruption?
That has evolved. Many times the the cure violence model where you had street interventionists on the streets, and you would have this idea that those closest to the problem had the solution. And so again, you would go into, say, gang neighborhoods or neighborhoods that you felt were the bad hotspot parts of the areas. Well, if you go in those areas right now, they're actually vacant. You don't see people outside, but where you see those communities on digital platforms. And while they congregate in these chat rooms and in these media spaces, there's hostility, there's arguments. Like you say, you can see the Twitter voices going back and forth on X's, and then you see an incident that happens. And so as we evolve from the physical space, we have to look at these digital communities as spaces of where violence is igniting and it's combusting offline. So we have to address it as such. Again, like I told you about the digital vans, there are kids right now, you go to any restaurant, they're going to have a phone in their hand. They're going to be on Roblox, they're going to be on Fortnite, all these different games. But what you're also going to see is that there are digital kidnappers who are in these spaces, making sure that they have your children's attention while you figure that they're, the device is keeping them busy on YouTube, or they're just watching the video. No, it's not. It's real. It's real. In the same way we want to be hand holding and watching and making sure our kids are safe in a reality space, walking kids to school, making sure they get on a bus and all those things. Why be present in that space and then let them roam free with no guidance and no security on online spaces? And so that's the thing. The reality of it, that this stuff is here. AI is here. Innovation is here. The metaverse is here. We can't just use these words and act like this world doesn't exist. But it's the main thing right now that's driving the violence, is driving the rhetoric that we see, the words and the things that the president doesn't go have a news conference when he says something. You know what? He goes on his digital platform and express what he wants to get across. Why is that? And we're not taking it as that there are no digital guardrails. I call them the peace guards. So the same way like you have a lifeguard, you go to a pool, the lifeguard is there just to make sure that, hey, everybody gets to swim and there's no debt or anything like that. On these digital platforms, where are the peace guards? Where are the people, the lifeguards, to make sure that you can come online, you can have discourse, but we can go home and be safe without violence? Or if we see someone saying, you know what, I really don't like you, when I see you, who's there to intervene and interrupt that? And I think that that's key. And to know that this is a real world that we're existing in. But again, it's preventable. And it's because we can predict it happening. Same way we can predict the beginning of football season. We can predict what's happening with hurricane season. We can predict this season, even like right now with school shooting and safety and stuff like this. We know it's going to happen. Why aren't we intervening?
I mean, that is so much very relevant food for thought. In our remaining minutes, just as you were saying that, I'm thinking about some of the headlines I've seen recently about some of the big industry leaders, the big social media companies that have been slowly disbanding their trust and safety teams. In fact, I think I just read a headline that TikTok was laying off hundreds of folks from their trust and safety team. And so, talk to us about the real public health risk that may be associated with that. I don't think a lot of us necessarily get in the weeds and we think about the role of content moderators on these platforms and their ability to be able to flag, hate speech, before it translates into some ugly form offline.
So again, we can use a public health approach, a digital epidemiology of how diseases spread. And we think that violence as a disease, right, it spreads by contact. And so if you had COVID and you went to the doctor, they'll say, well, who were you in contact with? What was the people around you? Because there was a possibility that you have infected the people you were around because you have it and you can infect some other people. Right. And so now To contain it, we had to get to the source of who was spreading it. If we take that same approach to violence online, who is spreading this information? Who is the infected person? And if you look at their followers, if you look at the comments that they make, you're seeing that, okay, now not only are they spreading it to you, but you're infecting other people with this violent attitude. And what's going to happen is that it's going to turn into a contagion. We can intervene though and have, just like violence is a virus that can spread, peace is a virus that can spread. We're not spreading enough peace, but we're spreading that, okay, for me to go viral, I have to do something bad. For me to go viral, I have to do something to get attention. And again, most of the time it's negative. For me to go viral, I have to show I got guns, or I am just my fights, showing the viral fights online just to go viral. Again, you're spreading. The more people watch it, the more people see it, you're spreading a disease. We have the same way we spread COVID through contact, we can spread this virus through contact. However, we can spread peace in the same concept. And so if we have more platforms like yours, we can have discussions and dialogue to find out what are the mental health disease discussions we can discuss. Why has digital addiction not being talked about enough? What are the side effects of removing these digital devices when we see that they have an impact on people? What is the treatment for digital addiction? There are so when you have platforms saying that they design this app to make you addicted to it. Like you're like no one is like, this is like digital cocaine that people are consuming daily. And yet we're saying it's okay. And not only do we say it's okay, we freely give it to our children every day just to keep them busy.
Mm-hmm. When we come forward, I want you to stick around with us just a little while longer. It's time for the quiet part out loud, and it's not lost on me. I'm sure it's not lost on a lot of you that today in history was the March on Washington. The March on Washington, where so many of our civil rights leaders really left their mark on this nation. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., Bayard Rustin, John Lewis, so many more to name. Also on this day in history, Emmett Till, Black teenager from Chicago, was abducted from his uncle's home in Money, Mississippi by two white men and was brutally slain 3 days later. When we come forward, I want to invite Patrick to have the final word, to share the quiet part out loud in terms of how he's reflecting on this day in history as he continues his work on the front lines of change. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Patrick Young when we come forward.